Dune Awakening had its first ever building contest not too long ago, Build Your Dune. There were many entrants, myself included. I was quite happy with my build and thought I had a decent shot, but I'll be honest, I got smoked. Some of these entries in this building contest might be the most insane builds I've ever seen, and today we're going to look at the best of the entries, but also we're going to look at the website that it was kind of semi-hosted on, which I think is a really useful utility for builders. So this was my entry, a small Atreides castle. Now, I gotta be honest, though I have been thoroughly outbuilt and outmaneuvered at every turn, I'm still quite happy with my build, but some of these builds in this, they have to be seen to be believed. Also, this competition was partly hosted on a website called Pimp My Dune, which is basically a forum just for builds in Dune Awakening. I honestly think this is a really great utility for the building community, both for learning and just sharing what you've built. The website is pimpmydune.com. I'll leave the link down in the description. I would encourage people really to get involved with this because it's something really great for builders. And honestly, there's nothing else like it. I think it beats Reddit, I think it beats Discord servers, and it's just a really great utility to have. Now, let's get to these builds. So the format was quite simple, you just had to make a base dedicated to the Harkonnen, the Atreides, or Chom. There were those three categories to win in, there was a first place winner for each, and then there was 2 runners up for each category and then honourable mentions. And we're starting off insanely strong with Saphira's Chom Trade Centre. Now this build is not that mechanically complex, in fact the more you look at it, the more simple it seems. However, what's really important here is just how well the scale and proportion of everything is done. The shape and design of everything is super impressive. There's nothing too long, too short, too wide or too narrow. Everything is in proportion as it should be, and it results in the whole structure looking really natural. You can actually see here there's a whole structure off to the side that, again, it's really quite simple. I think anyone could build this, but just the dimensions of it, the proportions, everything is near perfect. I think as well that these screenshots possibly aren't doing a great amount of justice to just how big this build is. If you look right down here, that's a single tile doorway, which obviously the player character can fit through, and that's the size of like the cornerstone of the build. Really, I think this build is a lot bigger than it initially seems. It's enormous. And most importantly, though there's nothing mechanically complex going on, it's a solid lesson in getting the fundamentals right. And that is going to be a constant throughout this entire video. The fundamentals are pretty much perfect with almost everything. Overall, the Chom Trade Centre is just beautifully balanced, the scale is really impressive, and honestly, it's a great build. Next up, the first place winner for the Harkonnen is Fifi with the Harkonnen Industrial Complex. This build is wild. The Harkonnen set does sort of get a bit typecast and it's not that popular, especially because if you don't use it that well it can kind of end up as one big block, but if there's any use case for it not being that all the time, this is it. When it's used properly, man, really, really impressive. There's so much detail, there's so many curves and shape changes. This is honestly a really, really impressive build. This screenshot really shows off how enormous the scale of the build itself is. There's a ton of great details literally everywhere you look, but the scale and the size of everything is just enormous. One of my favourite parts as well is the use of the inverted walls to make the Harkonnen symbol. Just genius, to be honest. Now this build is quite mechanically complex, but honestly, the results are well worth it. The Harkonnen set again can end up looking a bit if you don't blend it properly. This, man, phenomenal. I can see why this won first place because this is a first place build. Absolutely incredible, really well done, but also really nicely balanced, and it's in a great spot. These sort of twin spires that it's perched on is just the ideal spot for this build. This build is incredible, don't get me wrong, probably not the easiest thing to create, but man, well worth the first place. Last of the first place winners was Jorua, I might be mispronouncing that, with the Wind Chime Monastery. This has to be seen to be believed. What can I say? The level of detail everywhere is insane. When we pull it back and get a bit of a wider scale as well, everything just works together so well. There's almost an overwhelming level of detail, but there's just enough to balance it out, and I think these parts of the towers actually do a lot of heavy lifting in terms of letting off a little bit of steam from the detail. This shot from what I presume is sort of like the inner courtyard is, oh man, just crazy. There's just so many small things that you can latch onto. There's no lazy parts of the build. There's no, oh, I'll just stick a couple of walls here or there. It feels like every single piece has been placed consciously and with a good amount of forethought and planning. He's even hung wind chimes from underneath each of the corner pillars. That is commitment. I don't think I would have done that, to be honest. I think this is possibly the most intricate and detailed base design I've seen yet in Dune Awakening. I don't think it's going to be that easy to top, to be honest. All the pattern work and the shapes are really solid. There's a good amount of curved shapes, these especially, which I think are just roof covers that form a sort of archway with a gap either side. And these roof pieces here as well, but it's just such solid work. Clearly a lot of thought has gone into every single pattern in this build, and honestly it really shows and honestly deserves first place. I don't think it's an understatement to say this might be one of the most impressive builds I've ever seen in Dune and other games as well. Honestly, it's just kind of mind-blowing how it's all been put together. Such an impressive build. I don't think anything else could have taken first place with this being an entry. Next we have the runners-up, and firstly we've got Eristhea, the first runner-up in the Chome category with the Chome Oasis facility. This is a really quite simple base. It's a bit different from everything else, but it's really impressive how it's all been put together. It has a really clear shape and structure, but also it does a few things that I've not seen any builds do yet and is really quite unique. You can just about make it out here, but there's a sort of blue sheen over the floor. This is actually meant to be an infinity pool made with a pentashield. I don't even know where you pull the thought from to do that, but that's really impressive. You've got the pentashields around the back, you've got this part here, it's probably quite mechanically complex. Sloping sides, they don't behave themselves all the time, but this is well worth the effort put in. You get a really good sense of scale of the infinity pool design here as well. It looks, again, fairly small on the pictures, but I think it might be doing it a disservice because it looks enormous here. You also have these nice wide open bays, good views of pretty much everything all around, and honestly it's a really impressive build. The second Chome runner-up is Zathoth with the Chome Outpost Beta. This build is honestly pretty impressive. It's very strong, it's got really good core shapes and structures, but the more you look, the more finer details there are. These archways here and the choice to use these as opposed to just leaving the bottom blank is an impeccable decision. Had these not been here, I think the build would have looked significantly worse for it, but because he's arched each of these gaps, it just makes the whole thing not only look more stable, but really sells the shape and effect. Unlike some of the other builds, I don't think the photos are doing a disservice. You can really tell that this build is huge. There's some really nice details as well going on with these walkways and these balconies here. The decision to sort of step that one out above that one is a really good one. Had you run it all the way over to here, it would look a bit dodgy, a bit weird, but had you also kept them both the same length, it would have been not quite dynamic enough, so the choice to do that I think is really emblematic of the fine control and decisions that have gone into building this. This is one of those builds that can look a little plain on the surface, but the more you look at things, the more impressive it becomes. This is a really impressive base build, and honestly, I think whoever would live here would have a pretty good time of things. The first Harkonnen runner-up is Styx with the Citadel of Iron Shadows. I don't think I really need to say anything. Just impeccable. All the shape work is perfect. The curves are really well placed. It's not too curved, it's still got strong structures, but where the curves have been put, they fit perfectly. Everything sort of builds towards this apex right in the centre, but it also apexes on either side, which balances it nicely. This is an absolute masterclass, and again, another really great example of just how good the Harkonnen build set can be. I think perhaps one of the most underrated qualities about a good build is that everything feels like it's in the right place. There's nowhere where you can sort of point at a thing and go, that might work better over there. This is one of the good examples that everything feels like it's in precisely the right spot. Nothing feels out of place. Nothing feels like would I have made that decision? It just feels perfect, basically. This is such a strong entry in the Harkonnen category. Had I been judging, I possibly would have had a tough time picking between this and the other entry, but all in all, this is just mind-blowing. The second runner-up in the Harkonnen category is by Angladan, and it's called the Twin Star Sanctum. Now this build is honestly really impressive, but I feel almost like some of the shots don't quite do it justice. Some of the further away shots in this video, and some of the pictures as well, make it look good, but when you get really close up and start to see the fine details that have gone into it, man, mind-blowing. Like some of these large archways here, really impressive. You've got these almost like flying buttress roof designs, incredible, especially coming down from the fluted roof made by the Harkonnen set into the Atreides windows. This is possibly one of the best fusions I've ever seen of Harkonnen and Atreides. There's a real clear understanding of balance and fundamentals into creating something that looks, I don't want to say unusual, but it's not the approach I think most people would take in fusing Harkonnen and Atreides. But clearly Angladan has more than enough skill to pull it off, and it looks absolutely incredible. This build is just so impressive. There's so many fine details that all in all really make this build an absolute gem. The first runner-up in the Atreides category is Gramik with the Atreides Battle Arena. Now I'm going to be honest, I've built a lot of arenas in Conan Exiles. I haven't built one in Dune yet. Arenas are hard. Arenas are really not easy to do. It's real simple to just put a few rings together and put a pit in the middle, but that's a bit boring. Instead, what Gramik has done here is he's sort of stepped outside of the usual, here's a pit in the middle and rings around it, and he's built these very natural feeling structures. I think you look right in the centre here, again, would have been really easy to just have a pit, but you've got these sort of angled edges here, you've got these openings, you've got these entryways and these pods. Everything looks really unique and visually attractive, but it also feels very natural. I feel like this is just an exceptional example of how to do an arena without doing it in a boring fashion. Of course, the tradition of using stairs as arena seating carries on, and it works just marvellously. The entryway is just absolutely incredible. It's so easy to accidentally undersell the entrance of your build and thus kind of make it feel less important. This is a really important feeling entryway, and it gives the build the proper grandeur presentation it deserves. Overall, this arena is just absolute. Okay, that's marvellous. That is marvellous. Really great arena, great presentation in the video, man, impeccable. The last honourable mention for the Atreides is Zillion Onyx, whose entry was placed on Twitter. This build is just magnificent. Now I believe Zillion Onyx is a Japanese player, and I'll be honest, I do not know what the Japanese players do on Dune and Conan, but every time I've seen a Japanese player's build, it's just mind-blowing. Stuff I could never even dream of creating. I know there are some communities out there for Conan Exiles. I believe it's called Conan Outcasts in Japan. The builds have to be seen to be believed, and this is just a really great entry. There's a lot of details to love here as well. I think when you look at the front, this roof is fairly plain, and it would have been borderline boring were it not for these little triangles placed in the roof. The way they're structured, the way they're laid out, and the balance and shape difference they give, phenomenal. These sort of stepped walk-ups here, amazing. Man, there's just so many details to love. I could sit here for a while and pick out every single one. The balance on the top floor, the hangar at the rear, the lights used to line the heli strip, man, just incredible. A really great entry. It's a really solid understanding of the fundamentals as well, but also a great lesson in detail, and importantly, when not to include detail too. You can see it's quite plain around the bottom here, and to be honest, it doesn't really need anything down there. I think when you've got this much detail all the way around, you can have some plain parts like that, and it just gives you a little visual break. This build is just honestly so impressive. It really is an incredible achievement. Now, unfortunately, we don't have time to go through the honourable mentions. I've already been recording for a while, but the honourable mentions, they have to be seen because they're just incredible. You've got this one, honestly, mind-blowing. This usually I'm kind of good at, visually deconstructing a build. I don't know how that's been put together, but that is crazy. Just really solid builds across the board, and I think a really good showing for the Dune building community as a whole. I'll leave the link to this blog down in the description. I really encourage you to look at every single entry, because if you're like a beginner or a getting advanced builder, there's a lot of things you can learn. But if you are an advanced builder already, honestly, these builds are really incredible, and it's just nice to be able to look through them and see what people have created, because there's a lot of inspiration to be taken. There's a lot of tips and tricks and designs and little quirks about things that honestly are just mind-blowing. I'll also leave the link to Pimp My Dune down in the description as well. Again, I think this is something really valuable for the building community as a whole to have. I think it's better than Reddit, where posts can get kind of lost, and better than Discord, where it's sometimes a bit more of an insular community, or it's based around certain creators or whatever. This is a public forum essentially for just building, and I think builders should support it. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. I found out about this website probably when everyone else did, when the building competition started, but this is such an important utility to have that even if only a few people go over and create an account and become a part of the community, I think I'm quite happy with that. Anyway, that's going to wrap us up for today. I've somehow already been recording for quite a while. These kind of reaction FaceTime style videos, always FaceTime. This has taken surprisingly a lot longer than I expected, but I'm not the best at talking off script, to be perfectly honest. There's a lot of ums and ahs and dead air that I've had to cut out, but, well, comes with the territory. Again, I'll leave the link to the blog with all the entries and Pimp My Dune down in the description. If you're passionate about building, I do encourage you to go and look at them, because man, these are some of the best builds I've seen in a long time. I think a lot of people really put their all into this contest, and it really, really shows. On that note, thanks for watching, and a massive thanks to our wonderful esteemed coffee cultists for continuing to support the channel over on Patreon. Do check out the Patreon link in the description. There's early access to videos, wallpapers, blueprints, video credits, and more. And of course, joining us on Patreon will help support the channel directly. Take care, and I'll see you soon.